Yeah, so this is a part of a conference that I had done, but right, it was sort of communicating why we had been taking a look closely at these metaverse opportunities under the context of sort of a crypto native operator and communication with our delegators and stakers. And for some context, which we're kind of all aware of now, we had built a sort of an extension of a informational headquarters on Sandbox, obviously with different thematic elements, and attempting to start establishing ways of getting people to pay attention to us in short. And so there's kind of like, yeah, so I'll move on to this next one. Yeah, so we have some intros, the metaverse and what we're doing there. So that's me. I know you guys all know me. All right. So earlier this year, I actually had been researching a bit of some of these metaverses, Sandbox, Crypto Voxels, Decentraland, Somnium Space. There are a few others. And I basically set my sights on Sandbox because of some of its strengths relative to the others. And I think, at least financially, like that bet has paid off for us. And I think Chun is actually one of the largest landowners as well on Sandbox. And so we've been able to do a lot. And at least with that access, we've been able to get direct communication with a lot of their team. I had met Sebastian, their CEO, their co-founder and CEO, a few times, and then we obviously have also been able to be part of their Series B investment round. I guess further cementing sort of this relationship that we have with them. But also, right, with the entire change that Facebook has made to directly focusing on Metaverse, so much so that they actually even changed their name. And I think their ticker is also going to be like MVRS. They changed their name to Meta, sorry, not Metaverse. Right, this is becoming like this new frontier that a lot of people, or at least some of these technology companies, and I guess most of what Web3 believes in, is going to be moving into this sort of metaverse realm where there needs to be established presence, if that is going to be taking the attention of many people who are operating in Web3, right? And I guess for Meta the Facebook rebrand, a lot of people are going to be paying attention there as well. So it was natural where we thought, I thought that this was going to be an important place where we need to also kind of stake our flag in and start getting something, however experimental it is, to do that. And I thought it was important not only because there seemed to be this sort of fad or this movement. I guess Facebook made it not a fad because now everyone is following suit because they're the leaders, of an opportunity to kind of flex and also expose important concepts that validators need to kind of uphold, important principles that validators need to and potentially should uphold in terms of the accountability that goes, especially for the chains that we have exposed on-chain governance to. And then a final thought, point about this is that, right, even though Crypto Voxels is by far one of the most decentralized platforms, Sandbox, at least, right, if you were to try to pick something out of these four to kind of face off against Facebook's Meta, Sandbox had like the power, the clout, the partnerships, and whether we like it or not, those count a lot for who can kind of take broader and longer strides when there is going to be an inevitable fight between some centralized and decentralized platforms, where we all have to kind of consolidate our resources figuratively when that happens. And we have, obviously, right, this is kind of a part of why these metaverses could be important, where the ideology of pseudo-anonymity or outright anonymity and the censorship resistance we can have for here. Right, and this is basically the Facebook Meta versus decentralized metaverse platforms. It's funny because I had actually made this slide before Facebook had completely rebranded to Meta, but I think everyone who was kind of paying attention knew that Facebook was eventually going to do a big metaverse play, because they had done a lot of stuff with Oculus. And so I was basically, yeah, right. Facebook's going to be next up to basically take over the metaverse. For those of you who'd seen like Ready Player One, they're like basically the IOI, the bad guys. And so I was like, okay, we need to rally our troops around a decentralized metaverse with the right type of ideologies that crypto supposedly upholds. And so that was right. We got to cancel that. Yeah, and then this is an article I had written actually earlier this year about the utility that you can have with NFTs within metaverses, which we still do have it within Sandbox. I'll skip through this. All right, so this is going to be talking a bit about it, right? We've been actually working closely with Polygonal Mind, and I definitely have to give them a shout out because they're a huge studio. Back then they weren't. They're only actually 4 people when we started working with them. Now they've grown to over 50 people, just kind of in the last like 6 months, I think. And so we're very fortunate to have them. I know their founder quite well, and so we have one of the best metaverse builders in crypto. So that's something great. Yeah. So and this is actually something that a former colleague of ours, Tashina, had made, which is a super cool helmet, which is an example of like what, if you guys haven't seen what's going on in Sandbox, you have these sort of Minecraft voxelized avatars that you can have and have wearables. And right, we have this concept of like fish fam and stuff. So what we have here is essentially, as validators, we have this sort of relationship, or I would say quote unquote relationship, with delegators / stakers who come and give their tokens to us. And for certain networks that do expose on-chain governance, we vote on their behalf. They delegate their right to vote. Sometimes, like Cosmos, delegators have the potential and option to vote independently of where we voted. But that is, I think, few and far between. And actually, we've seen times where they have voted against us, against what we were doing. And right, that should be completely, their right. So beyond like the new frontiers of like this exposure and promotion that we were seeing, that I was talking about how metaverses would be that. We have this sort of brand identity of being first movers in this space, which I think maybe I was proven right because of like this, right? Literally the largest, social technology company in the world has kind of branded and put all their eggs in this basket of metaverse. But we also have, this important part of maybe delegator courting and delegator communication. And that's kind of like, maybe we have done as stakefish some sort of BD, maybe it's just been personal relationships, some of which I've just personally been talking to VCs to come and delegate and stake. But we are also heavily retail focused, and how do retail people find us? We need to be able to be seen by where they go and live or play or experience or interact with each other. And so this is, I think, just like a natural step towards, just like establishing a presence for them to see what we're doing beyond all of the, which I think the marketing team I know Tasom's not here, but the marketing team has done like a fantastic job as kind of like maybe an extension of sort of this retail BD work, where we have like a very friendly brand identity. So people can kind of see us when we're fun. There is potential for them to trust us. And then when I'm not, I guess when I do my rants sort of in these different conferences, they do understand and recognize that we do care about like these core fundamental principles of how important decentralization is and what problems need to be fixed. So I think those two, at least on the delegator courting side, are a good match, right? I wouldn't say only ranting is good, but calling out the information and the concepts and the ideologies that we uphold with the sort of friendly brand identity that we've established is important for people to ultimately trust us and then finally take that last step in staking with us. And one of the last points is, right, this delegator communication. So once they have ended up staking their tokens with us and sort of, I guess, trusted us and to some extent to do the right type of voting, we have an important role as validators to uphold the type of ideologies that we did kind of communicate to them. But that doesn't that doesn't prevent us from also behaving badly, right? I think, and for maybe many or some or many of you, the reasons why we did come into the cryptocurrency ecosystem, myself included, had been when we had seen some of the failures of these centralized systems fall into corruption and inefficiency and ineffectiveness. And not to be as so pessimistic with the direction of what we've seen a lot of, like this consolidation of power and token aggregation happening as validators, we do need to be mindful of in some networks, the inordinate amount of power that we do hold and influence that we do hold over very, very important power and responsibilities, especially when that does give us the opportunity to influence network parameter and infrastructure changes, as well as some of the social moves there. And so that does mean that we as validators do need to be held accountable, and there needs to be some form of checks and balances that needs to exist, especially in the absence of centralized regulators, because we have none, right? I often use this sort of analogy where, like, we've built this new financial system, and we've seen, right, the traditional financial system has evolved effectively alongside a legal system for hundreds of years. And us, with our new financial system, are operating in a vacuum with no legal system, no expansive legal system that is accounting for a lot of potential problems that we face. One of which being sort of like the power that validators do have. We need to be held accountable. We need to be checked and balanced. And who, in the absence of centralized regulators, can do that? It has to be the community that is staking with us. And if the community is the ones responsible, because of the community, the ones that do stake with us are the ones responsible for holding us accountable. How do we right, make someone care who doesn't actually care right now, or who doesn't have the knowledge or wherewithal to understand why they should care to do that? And that is the whole concept of like this of delegator communication, where if they are just treating us like banks and just kind of saying like, hey, like, I'm just going to stake, get passive income, but we're operating without any, consequences for what we do. We vote a certain way that is perhaps very antithetical to what a staker that stakes with us believes in, and they don't know, then where's the accountability, right? If you break a rule, even if an ideological rule, and then no one punishes you for it, then what's the use of even having that rule? And so, right, the kind of steps that we can kind of see is that if we know that we need to have some sort of checks and balances in the absence of any centralized regulator, and we know that we need to have some form of self-regulation, and one of the points of that self-regulation is accountability that needs to be upheld, and that accountability can only be upheld by our delegators slash stakers. And if the delegators slash stakers are the ones that need to hold us accountable, they need to pay attention. And if they don't pay attention, we need to make them somehow figure out a way that there needs to be attention paid. And so if we are exposed and communicating with them as we have, which I'm super proud of what we've been able to do, especially as sort of like a leader in the validator space, showing other validators what we can do, especially with what we have done with we had written before 7-minute long Medium posts that no one really read. Then we transitioned into like those 1 to 2 minute videos that does do like these POS weeklies that is more digestible on Twitter. We have like this sort of like this culture that is paying attention, right? As memes and pictures can communicate in so many ways. And this sort of fish fam concept and this campaign and initiative where, right, if you're part of this family at the end, right, this is the end of that like little kind of logical path that I was describing. If you're part of a family slash clan slash guild, you pay attention to what's going on because it's fun and and you feel part of something, and then you eventually pay attention. If you pay attention, you see what is going on with a stakefish. You see what's going on with stakefish. You see what they're voting on. You get more active. Then if you see what we're voting on, you have the opportunity to hold us accountable if you have strong opinions, and then perhaps we can showcase some small form of what self-regulation can look like, at least from the delegator to validator level. And then when validators do have to communicate with these networks, what can be done there. So that is sort of like this kind of hashtag FishFam initiative. And I'm pretty confident in saying that no other validator is sort of doing something like this. And I think that we are privileged to have such a large and diverse group of people that I don't think many other validators, large validator service providers have. And so we have the ability to kind of extend our bandwidth and resources to kind of push forward and be trailblazers in this system. And one example is, right, literally just communicating how we vote. And we've been doing that. And only after that have we been seeing other validators also start communicating how they vote, right? Chainflow, Figment, because they do recognize that, right? I did, admittedly get into a lot of people's faces at these conferences, kind of calling them out. And right, when you communicate with these people, these validators, they do recognize, yeah, that is important. And then once you call them out, then they will kind of fall in line and then do what is, quote unquote, right. Yeah. So yeah, this is the sort of concept around delegator communications, the FishFam initiative, and it all kind of flows up into self-regulation, accountability, and a lot of kind of filling in these vacuums that we've seen, especially as POS is, very relatively new. And there is an opportunity for us as validators, which are going to become very, very influential and very important in upholding a lot of these values, especially as, right, a lot of people may want to revert to certain situations or certain paths that are maybe that don't necessarily stay true to the whole point of crypto to begin with. Sorry, that got a bit long, but that's some of what we had been kind of talking a lot about. And yeah, it's kind of scary how, right, we obviously as validators and infrastructure service providers see how the sausage is made. And sometimes it's not a very pretty sight. And so we are literally directly first in line to solve those problems and hopefully make a better sausage. I think I shared a video in the Slack a few weeks ago, or maybe it was a week ago. I don't know. Crypto moves so fast, but like, right, we have some in certain cases that have on-chain governance exposed this concept of like direct democracy, which is quite frightening, because there's this Indian philosopher, I think, who is talking about, right, how, right, direct democracy is for the people, of the people, by the people, but the people are stupid. They don't they sometimes don't know what like long-term visions mean, or they often have short-term visions. So, right, that gives us, right, especially in these decentralized systems, it gives us, there's a lot of tug of wars that are happening, where as businesses, we want to continue growing and increasing our revenue. But if we continue growing and increasing our revenue as validators in these POS networks, there's this concept of decentralization where we need to like, we don't want to get too big. And so there's this tug of war that's happening, and we want, in a pure competitive environment, that to exist. But then also, right, we have this, right, this very scary direct democracy, one person, one vote, or one token, one vote, or one token, one voting power existing, where sometimes are we as validators at the mercy of delegators or stakers who have a lot of this control. And I would say they don't understand, they don't know yet the scary amount of control that they have over us, because without their stake, we have no power, right? Unless we self-delegate or have our own, right? Because if they decide to stake to someone else, then our voting power may go down, and other validators that do kind of bend the knee to these people who may not necessarily have the right sort of motivations happen. And I want to say, I guess, quickly one last thing of like why that might be scary is that, right, with this one person, one vote, or one token, one vote, where there is the opportunity, like in Cosmos, for delegators to kind of choose whatever they want, or even if they do delegate and they demand a lot of things from us, let's say in a pure system that I had described, where there is a lot of accountability or delegator communications, and these delegators are communicating with us with what they demand and want. And if they demand and want things that we know from, right, where we have the technical wherewithal to understand the ramifications of some potential votes, and they don't care, and we try to communicate, what's going to happen? And like, I don't know if there are Republicans here, but like in America, but like we saw sort of like this breakdown of this in America, where we had someone like Trump. I guess in Europe, there's like the Boris Johnson and stuff, but like where you have demagogues and influencers who did have like gathered these masses and was able to get things done that were very, very scary to a lot of people who actually knew how things were happening. And so I think that it is only a matter of time where there is an influencer or a demagogue type that does recognize the power that can be wrangled and grasped from these delegators that may only have short-sighted like commitments to just wanting to pump their bags, getting that power, and then forcing a lot of scary things happening, and whoever ruining things. So I just wanted to include that example as a means of like what kind of tug of wars that exist when we do also have, you know, more efficient communication with our delegators. And maybe we need to do something about that. I don't know. It's like when you do recognize that there is this extreme power that exists, and you're just saying that it's bad, and then you're looking and just waiting for someone to like take that power. Maybe we need to take that power first and become something that maybe is or maybe nip in the bud, or create a system that does need to make sure that those controls are reined in. I don't want to say that, especially with this governance, that we do have this responsibility for in a system, but like it seems like sometimes there's a lot of recreating of these wheels. I mean, right, there's like this, right, in America there's like a popular vote, and then there's like an electoral college vote that exists expressly to sort of control like the masses who might not know better. But I'm sorry, this is kind of, there's a lot of these concepts that do fit into why sort of like this community and communication of this sort of hashtag FishFam concept does play an integral role in what can happen now and what is really important, what really can be an important building block for a decentralized system that we can kind of hold each other accountable for. So yeah, I know a lot of people maybe already knew some of this, and I've ranted a bunch, but to them, but like, yeah, I think now a lot of people now know well, so sort of these pieces can see like, why are we doing this stakefish stuff, or sorry, sandbox stuff, and then just kind of hopefully can kind of fit together logically of what makes sense.